16. Welcome again to the session. The session today is about COVID-19 pandemic impact on telecom sector. As we mentioned, telecom sector was one of the economy sector that has its own portion of the impacts resulted from the pandemic, but at the same time, it acts as the solution or the leverage by which the continuity of normal and semi-normal life and operations on many sectors depended on. In tonight's CEO talk with ooredoo CEO Ian Charles Dench, we will explore together the impacts of the pandemic on telecom sector. Ian has been the Chief Executive Officer of ooredoo Oman since 2016, has been a part of ooredoo Group since 2006, where he initially joined ooredoo as an Executive Director. He then became the company's Chief Marketing Officer. In 2016, Ian became the company's Group Chief Commercial Officer before relocating to the Sultanate of Oman. Prior to joining ooredoo, Ian was the head of sales and marketing at Betelco, the Bahrain-based telecommunications company. Before that, he held a number of executive positions with O2 and British Telecom. As a veteran in the industry, Ian has served on the board of a number of organizations. Ian holds an MBA from CAAS, City University Business School in London, and is FCIM Chartered Marketer from the Chartered Institute of Marketing, SIM, the world's leading professional marketing body in the UK. With over 30 years of experience with leading telecommunication companies across Europe, Asia, and Middle East, Ian continues to work within the industry to help build relationships, support his team, and always keep people connected. With such rich biography, we are delighted to have Ian as our guest tonight in the second station of the CEO Talks series sponsored by the MBA program in the college. So on the behalf of the university, the college, and audiences, it is my pleasure, Ali Salam Al-Shidani, to offer special welcome to Ian. So Ian, thanks for your time and welcome to this virtual session.
Thank you so much, Ali. That was an interesting start to the session. A little bit unusual, but as I mentioned earlier, I think this is all part of, it shows you that we're all getting used to new forms of communication and managing those new forms of communication. And as we spend more of our lives in the digital space, security has become, this is a thought, security has become an increasing part of protecting our personal data, and whether it's individuals or companies or even meetings like this. I have a number of slides. I'm going to try and whiz through them in about 30 minutes. It's really a show and tell of our response to COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, as a large organization, we have lots of plans in place for crisis management and business continuity. But I would say, I think very few companies had full plans in place for such an event. So what I'm going to walk you through is as the pandemic evolved, the issues that emerged for us and how we handled them. Let's jump to the next slide, right? You've already had some information on my biography, and we don't have much time, so I won't dwell on this, other than to say, I think the MBA, I know you're all MBA students, but I think that the MBA for me was one of the pivotal moments in my career. I think it helped solidify my position with my peers. It gave me a level of confidence to go out into the business world and make a mark. And I wish you all the best in your MBAs. I understand there's exams coming up. I wish you good luck with those exams
Yes, thanks a lot.
as well. So a quick, I don't know how much everyone knows about ooredoo. So on the next slide, I'll just give you a snapshot. And this is important, I think, when you think about it in the context of the pandemic. So we're 1,000 employees. 96% of those are Omanis, by the way. Our Omanization is very high. We've been in the Sultanate for 15 years, almost 16 now. Our mobile license, we renewed our mobile license just this year. So the first concession was 15 years. We've just renewed our mobile license with the government for another 15 years. We have over 2,500 sites. So the mobile sites you see around the Sultanate, there are 2,500 of those. Incidentally, if you want to know the difference between an Omantel site or an ooredoo site, ours have 3 legs. There was a reason for that, to save on steel. So there were some operational efficiencies by having towers with 3 legs, not 4. So if you see towers and you see one with 3 legs, that's an ooredoo tower. We have over 6,000 kilometers of fiber. We cover 99% of the population, around 2.4 million customers on fixed and mobile services, prepaid, postpaid, home broadband. Of course, we serve businesses and we serve consumers. And we like to think of ourselves as digital leaders. And I think I'll be touching on that, this digital transformation, as we go through the presentation. It really came to the fore about 2 or 3 years ago. We put together a plan, an initiative which we called our Tahaddi program, which was a digital transformation program. And it really was fortuitous for us that we put this effort into putting in place digital channels to serve our customers as the pandemic emerged, and lockdowns and other things came to be. The digital channels really helped us keep in contact with our customers, business and consumer. Next slide, right, please. So here's some, on this graph, we'll walk through some of the key dates, but just to sort of refresh your memory, and there's some lines on this graph. The top one is data traffic. So as you can imagine, as the pandemic emerged and as people were at home, we saw data traffic growing on our network quite considerably. I'll give you some numbers on that in a moment. You can see that again, as it emerged as well, the red line with the dots is voice traffic. I'll explain a little bit about that. And the orange line is it calls to our call center. So in March, of course, the first cases were in February, but of course in March, things became very serious, and overnight, a full lockdown took place. So we, as ooredoo, as like many businesses, were forced to make some tough decisions. So first of all of our shops were closed. So now this is the main way that we serve our customers, and they're all closed. And we send our staff home, of course, and I'll explain a little bit about that. Overnight as well, we sent everyone from our office home. So I've explained this to some people. If you'd have asked me before the pandemic, how quickly could you go to full home working? We would have said, oh, we'll study it. Maybe we'll need a few months, 6 months, whatever. We need, we need connectivity at home. We need certain bandwidth. We need this. We need that. But overnight, we had no choice. So we had to send everyone home, including the call center. And to today, our call center, everyone is operating from their home all over the Sultanate, using VPNs, using technology. And imagine, so with the shops closed, people are calling now. They're worried about having connectivity because everyone suddenly realizes, well, I need connectivity at home. I need to stay in contact. I need to make sure that I've got enough balance on my prepaid line. So that orange line, you see the calls to the call center growing because the shops are closed and everyone's at home at the same time. So imagine the situation for us, seeing that everyone's at home. We need technology. We need to move people to home, make sure that they have the ability to serve customers. Shops are closed, demand is growing, traffic is growing on our network as well. So this creates a number of challenges for us. But I'll come on to that in a moment. as we go through the pandemic, you can see that, of course, in May, we were able to open some shops in a very safe way, in a certain way, with social distancing, with sanitizers and PPE, of course. We were very, I'm very pleased with this this achievement as well. We were able to launch 5G during the middle of this this whole pandemic, and that's quite an achievement because with the airports closed, with the ports closed, there's equipment that we have to bring into the country. So getting equipment into the country to put to launch a 5G network was quite challenging. Plus, if you remember, there were various lockdowns in terms of movement between governments. So our staff needed special permission, needed permits, needed to do things at certain times of the day to just to operate and maintain a business. And to launch 5G, I'm very proud of our people for being able to do that. I think I claimed it, but I haven't double checked, but I think we were the only telco to launch 5G in the middle of the pandemic. And so on, as we go through, you'll see, you know, as things opened up, we were able to serve customers in different ways. We had some challenges on internal communication because people are at home, they're locked at home, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, then we've gone into back to school and so on and so on. Let's dive into a bit more of the detail, I think. Next slide, please. So, of course, we have a crisis management plan, as I've mentioned, and business continuity is key. And we gathered our management team very urgently, and what we came up with a plan, and there were four key pillars, if you like, to our plan. Number one has to be protect staff. You know, if you cast your minds back, this was quite scary. You know, we didn't know what how this pandemic, how it was going to spread, how the virus was going to spread, how contagious it was, what would be the impact. So number one for us was protect staff. So this was our underlying philosophy. So this had to be the first one. The second one is to protect the network. As you mentioned, Ali, you know, and it's obvious with hindsight, but you know, internet connectivity is the backbone of our lives now, for commerce, for education, for everything, for entertainment. And you know, the worst possible scenario for us would be that there's congestion, there's service interruption, and when you see the network traffic growing and growing and growing and growing, you start to get concerned. You know, we have to make choices and decisions how to protect the network, adding capacity, you know, the technical people making changes and tweaks and changes, adding international capacity. A lot of our traffic goes international, of course. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we saw. They're quite interesting. You can probably imagine what they were. Serving customers, of course, has to be up there. We have to keep serving our customers and keeping them connected to us. And I think, you know, you could see by the calls that we were getting, you know, the calls really started to multiply, and that really tested the technology that we had. But you know, we made some changes and adaptations, and we put new processes in place very quickly and new protocols. And if you can recall that graph, the calls start to come down. And there's some other reasons for that as well, which is our digital channels. So digital channels became a really key part of serving customers, whether it's through social media to communicate, or through the app or the e-shop or other digital channels. And they are absolutely vital to keeping the service continuity, the contact going with our customers. And of course, we have to support the government. This is a national issue. It's not a time for competition. So, you know, we worked with the government as an industry, as a telecommunications industry, with similar objectives. So I spoke to my counterparts in the industry. We worked with the government, the telecom regulator, and, you know, looking at a plan of how best to keep the networks running, keep the business going, and keep serving customers. And this was absolutely key. And of course, certain sectors needed our help more than others. large customers had, very similar challenges to us. So suddenly our big customers all their staff are at home. They need more bandwidth. They need connection at home. They need connection at their data center. They need connection, more bandwidth at their offices. In the early days, the emergency services need our help. In the early days, the Ministry of Health needed our help. Later on, of course, the Ministry, and more lately, the Ministry of Education. So it's really been top of our list as well, to play our part as part of our corporate social responsibility. This wasn't a time for competition. This wasn't a time about ooredoo versus other operators. This was a time of, national, it still isn't time of, supporting the nation and doing our bit
Yeah.
for that. Next slide.
If I may, Ian, ask a question on this
Sure.
on this part about protecting or ensuring the continuity of the business and serving the country and serving the customers while protecting your staff and protecting your operations. Of course, we expect that this will come up with a step up on the cost. All right, or maybe the agility of your organization has been able to absorb this complexity and manage the cost not to inflate.
It's very interesting. Like, of course, there were certain costs, but there are certain savings as well. And one interesting anecdote is that we've actually seen productivity improvements in many areas.
Mm-hmm.
And because, and partly because, what we see now is output. If people are working at home, we're not concerned what time people come to work, what people finish work. All we're concerned about is the output. And we've definitely seen gains in productivity, improvements in productivity. A lot of people are enjoying the flexibility that working from home brings. And we are seriously looking at now the long-term future of how we operate as a business. Do we need everyone in the office at a desk? Do we need to have an office, for 1,000 people, for example? So there are potentially as well some savings in the future. The serving customers through digital channels, one of the promises of digital transformation is that it reduces some of your operating costs. So if you can serve customers through digital channels, do you need to invest in some of the physical channels, for example? So there should be some cost savings and efficiency gains. Of course, there were some increased costs in the beginning. We had to rapidly, for example, we needed PCs for people at home. And
yes,
actually getting PCs in March was very difficult because everyone needed PCs. So, we have to go out into the market and buy PCs and various other costs. And of course, we incurred some costs which, in terms of support, we, in doing our bit, we made some contributions to different sectors in the form of, a CSR as well. But major cost, no, actually.
all right.
Major
But
cost, no.
yes, if we take it a little bit wider, so does the pandemic, for example, demand a revision for the whole ooredoo business model, and maybe it will require some evolvement on the even mission and vision of the company, or you think it's still early to judge on this?
I think this pandemic will have long-term impacts on all businesses because I think we've learned a lot of lessons. And let's take one example, which is the digital transformation. Ooredoo is part of a group as well. We're one of 10 companies in the ooredoo family. As you know, we're in Qatar and Kuwait in the GCC, but we're in many other countries as well. And
yes,
one of the conversations that we've had as a group is how we maintain the benefits that we've seen and the acceleration that we've experienced of the adoption of our digital channels, because there are many benefits in the form of better service, better efficiencies, and so on. So we're really looking at how can we, when we go back, which will be a gradual process, how do we keep that momentum going? So to answer your question at a very high level, yes, it will have a lasting impact. It will change, I believe. We already had a vision, let's say. Our vision actually is enriching customers' digital lives.
Yes.
So imagine that's a sweet spot right now for us. So that's our vision. And you've seen our strapline. So enriching customers' digital lives so they can enjoy the internet. That's our strapline. Enjoy the internet. So the pandemic has really accelerated a lot of the plans that we had to get customers to adopt the digital services, the digital channels that we had.
Yes.
But I'll come on to a bit more of that in a moment.
Yep.
Next slide. Oh, cancel. So in protecting staff, that picture there is me on the left. I visited the call center and I sent it to colleagues. It's empty. So our call center normally has 100 people. And, we look at certain KPIs in terms of answering calls, serving customers, and our people, answer thousands of calls every day, and they're doing it from home. Of course, had to get used to working with Zoom, as we've done this evening, and all the troubles with Cisco, Skype. We use all of these. We introduced an internal app so that our staff could, get some of the facilities that they normally would go to our HR department from. So they go to an app. We had to sanitize regularly offices and buildings, even when people weren't there. This is a regular practice. And of course, one of the things that emerged for us is that in the early days, being at home was, maybe there's some excitement, there's some concern, it's different. But there are long-term impacts. People are at home with their families, with their children. This is an unusual situation. So some people found it a little bit challenging as well. So we had to think about people's, their mental well-being as well as their physical well-being. And we introduced various programs of support for our staff. Of course, we focused on the obvious thing of PPE, social distancing, and sanitation, but people's mental health as well is very important to us. And while working from home is nice in some ways, it can be quite stressful, particularly when children, family, and so on and so on. So we worked with some partners as well to help our staff. As it said there, we've seen productivity gains. We managed to have a very few number of infections because we've kept people away. And although some institutions are going back, our offices are actually in a shopping mall. So it's very challenging for us. And we're on a second, third floor. So getting in and out of our building is a bit challenging. So we're looking at ways of how we're going to get back. But we kept everything going. So as it says on there, we kept the learning going, we kept the development going, we kept the communication going. And we are still all working from home till this day. There are a few people now back in the office. People are starting to drift back, but we're keeping the vast majority of our people at home. On the next slide. So one of the key things I think is communication. If you have 1,000 people working from home that are used to connecting, socializing, gathering, coffee, and this is all part of working life. This is all part of being a human being. So again, we've used digital channels. We will launch something called Facebook Workplace, which is the same as Facebook, but it's just for our staff. And this is not only available in Oman, but this connects all of our staff across the whole of the ooredoo family in 10 countries. So it's fascinating. So I'll post something. Here I am, in Oman, by the sea. It's beautiful. Or actually, we posted some pictures during the stormy season from Salalah, to show our colleagues, look at the heavy rain, and so on. So it's a way of getting, that contact, that human contact between teams So we use it here in Oman. So each business unit has their own groups. Teams have their own groups. They can chat, they can post, and it gives that, you know, that social cohesion among teams. We managed to do an all hands, which is, you know, every year we have an event for all staff. We managed to get all staff together. We did something called a digital summit with the whole 10 companies in the group through Zoom and through Workplace. It was an amazing event. So I think that's one of the lessons that we learned. While people work from home in the early days, there are lots of challenges. We have to adapt to the new way of working, but the technology, fortuitously, like Zoom, like Workplace, is there and has been there, and I think we've all got used to working with it. And of course, we forget the year just seems to fly by. We've gone through Eid and Ramadan and so many things all together, but we've managed to keep the cohesion of the company together because, you know, at the end of the day, our brand is about the people. It's about the human capital and how they, you know, how they, the cohesiveness of the cohesiveness of the team, and then how they, how that then it serves our customers. Next slide. So protecting the network, I'll just give you a few little anecdotes here. This is quite interesting on the next slide. As I mentioned to you, you know, the scariest thing for as a CEO of or senior executive in a telco, it would be service interruption. And when we see, you see data growth 48%. So of course we build our networks for growth, but you know, we have certain idea about forecasts, so we invest on a continuous basis for growth. But we weren't, you know, it's not so we weren't. You don't expect to get that kind of growth overnight. So we were very concerned, and that was a big concern for us. So our team had their own sort of crisis management team working around the clock, and there's some key activities there: expanding international bandwidth, expansion of HBB is home broadband, because with people being at home, mobile became less of a concern, but connectivity at home, internet at home became absolutely vital. And the traffic just kept growing and growing and growing. And of course, we're looking at that and thinking, wow, we have to make sure that there's no service interruptions. Absolutely key. And very interesting in terms of the kind of applications. So of course, if you look on the chart here, of course, people using Facebook and WhatsApp. We saw big growth in YouTube and entertainment. Interestingly, PlayStation was we saw big growth in PlayStation because now people are at home and they're you know they're entertaining, and the children are at home and they're trying to entertain themselves. And of course, there was a period when TikTok really took off. I think it's died down a little bit now, but TikTok became very popular, and we saw the growth in all of these applications on our network. And one of the things that I'll mention, of course, when the pandemic started and people were at home, we wanted to make it. We had a stay-at-home campaign. I'll mention that in a moment. We wanted to make sure that customers stay connected, and we wanted to make sure that we had offers and promotions in the market to help our customers. But we're very cautious about what we do with the data offers, for example, because if we run promotions on data promotions, for example, in the peak, then we might just add to the traffic. So one of the big promotions that we did to help citizens was we did free local calls. It doesn't affect the data network, but it does allow people to make and connect during an important time through local calls, which is why the voice traffic grew by 52%. And we did that in coordination with Omantel as well. So we had free local calls. And you can see on the chart here, you know, just some of the other things, the growth levels, 40% for Netflix. This is huge. And Netflix traffic, because it's video, is very data intensive. And look at Zoom, the platform that we're all communicating on here tonight. Just look at the growth level that we've seen. And again, you know, these applications, they are not here in Oman. Many of them, we have to go international as well. So we have to make sure that we have the bandwidth connected, not to the outside world, and we have to make sure that the latency is not too great. Nobody wants to see, buffering when they're looking at YouTube, or buffering when they're watching Netflix, or particularly with gaming, nobody wants to have that low latency, so they can't win the game, and they shoot and they get shot. So lots and lots of effort going into not only the network availability, but the speed, the bandwidth, the latency, and really looking deeply at the applications that our customers were using, and making tweaks and changes to the network to make sure that we had a really a good service. Next slide. And unprecedented demand. So you can imagine what, for the engineering team, it was, big challenge. Serving customers. Next slide. This was something that I thought was interesting. I'm sure you've been studying digital transformation. There are lots of jokes out there about who's responsible for your digital transformation. Is it the CEO, the CTIO, or was it COVID? And I think, as it says here, we've all been planning for digital transformation, but boy, were we happy that we'd made good preparation, because when COVID came along, our preparation really paid off. Next slide.
If we ask one question here, Ian, sorry for the interruption. In managing the demand, or the increase in the demand of the services, was there adequate coordination with the source of the demand? For example, for the Ministry of Education, since it was decided that they will go what you call online, yes. Was there what you call enough of a coordination between the telecom sector, Sultanate, and the ministry? Yeah.
Yes, and I have a slide in a moment. Education, of course, it's our children, and it's so important. There's nothing more frustrating. I have a young son, and I've been through it myself. If the Google Classroom is not working, or there's a connection problem, it's frustrating for parents. And a lot of effort went into dimensioning the network, because I think you have 400, hundreds of thousands of students coming online from the 1st of November, for example. So a lot of effort went into pre-planning. Now, can you really prepare for something like that? You can do your best. I think there will always be some challenges, but to answer your question, yes, very good coordination. And we look at this in some detail, and coordination with different government, with our own ministry, with the regulator, even between the operators as well. Because traffic, for example, moves between us and Omantel, for example. So with this change, this increase, we have to handle that even between ourselves. Yeah. So simple answer is yes. I've seen excellent. I think this is another thing. The pandemic. There's a lot of positives come out of this, and the way that people come together and collaborate is surely one of the things that I think will have a long-lasting impact on society, on business, on relationships between the private and the public sector in general. So here, serving customers. This is a beautiful picture. Closed for business. So imagine 67 stores, 198 staff. We have 7,000 daily transactions, 6,000 daily footfall across our network. So, and overnight closed. So, if you can imagine what the impact of on our customers is. Where do I go? I need to pay a bill. I need to top up my account. I want to order an extra bandwidth, and so on and so forth. So people really concerned. Next slide. So I mentioned, what really saved us was the preparation that we put in place. So we had put in place some time ago. Now, was it perfect? No, but what we had in place was a good foundation, and we very quickly used the word agile. We adopted an agile IT development methodology some time ago, and again, that really helped us. This is where you do the minimum viable proposition, and launch things quickly, test, make sure it works, and then move on to the next. And this approach, combined with the channels that we had put in place, really served us well. And you can see, like, through our e-shop, we're able to serve customers. in the early days, there were limited services. We quickly realized that certain services were important to customers. So we add them quickly to the e-shop. The app has grown by 40%. We have, I think, 1 million active users now on the app, which is phenomenal. I've been here 4 years. I think when I first came, I remember when it was 50,000. So that's the kind of growth levels that we've seen, quite phenomenal. And of course, social media plays a big part. We can use WhatsApp, we can use Facebook to communicate with customers. We launched some time ago a chatbot, so we were able to divert some of those, more straightforward queries and questions to our chatbot. It's Saeed and Saida are our chatbot characters, and that uses artificial intelligence to answer basic questions, and it goes so far. When the question can't be answered, then it diverts to an agent. So all of these things we put in place, and as I say, it served us well. And we've seen now, customers are more than happy to pay their bill, to buy top up, to change products, to order new products through our digital channels. I'll mention one thing here: home delivery. So we were doing a little bit of home delivery, but now we realize we want to do more home delivery, and the orders started to build up, and suddenly we're handling much more home delivery than we anticipated. So we need a fulfillment center. We don't really have a big fulfillment center. We were handling small numbers on a daily basis. Suddenly it's jumped up by a factor of 10. So some of what we were able to do, this is just a small example. The staff that we have, or the employees that we have in our shops, I mentioned it's a couple of hundred people. We were able to bring people together and develop fulfillment centers, so that when orders were received on our e-shop, we were able to take items from the warehouse, deliver them to the different regions, and then make sure we could get them delivered to people's homes. So again, it was reactive. We adapted. You mentioned agility. We're able to adapt, to change. People very quickly got together. We came up with solutions, and we were able to build a completely new delivery arm, if you like. And now we find customers like to have things delivered to home, whether it's SIM cards, the new iPhones which recently came out, and other products that we have as well. So this really paid off for us, was the investment that we've made in our digital channels and social media. And of course, the other side to this now is that a lot more of our marketing dollars are going into digital channels. So with customers looking at our e-shop, looking at the app, we can deliver personalized messages to customers in a completely different way than the past, traditional channels. And I'm sure you've done studies, you have Google Analytics and all these other tools to really help you drive, much more effective marketing campaigns when you're using digital channels. When our customers are engaged in digital channels, it's a much more personal way of engaging with customers. So there's a benefit as well in terms of how we communicate now and how we do marketing to customers. We're shifting a lot more of our marketing effort to be personalized through digital channels. Next one. I'm conscious of time, so I'll try to speed up. I mentioned we ran a number of campaigns. We put it under the umbrella of Stay Home and Stay Safe with ooredoo. So we did offer free local calls, as I mentioned, because we were worried about data. We ran a special promotion for off-peak data, so that the data was much cheaper in the evenings. It was very nice and very successful. Again, just to make life a little bit easier for everyone. And we had similar offers, by the way. This, again, as I mentioned, this wasn't a time for competition. This was a time to try and help the community. So the offers that we put in place, we're really trying with customers at home. What can we do? Local calls are going to help. Yeah, data, especially in the evening, children at home, entertainment, and so on and so forth. Making it easy, trying to help customers stay connected. And we just know how important the internet is now for us while we're at home. Next slide. Of course, we slowly went back, and we were able to open our shops in fact, at one stage, our shop staff, they found ways, depending on the region, to serve customers through WhatsApp. Some of them had a little window. They were able to, if they had the appropriate approval from the local authorities. But eventually, we slowly went back, and the frontline staff really are heroes. The vast majority of the back office staff are not in the office, but our customer service agents, they really are heroes. They've been serving our customers since the shops opened, and of course, then we've had various partial lockdowns, curfews, etc., and they've responded, marvelously to that. And of course, they're constantly thinking about their own safety. They're thinking about the safety of our customers and their health as well. So we've gone through training, and we put certain special measures in place to try and keep everything safe. And there's some pictures of us here, just going out and thanking them again. It's very important that we have that cohesion among with the team and keep the communication going. It's absolutely vital. Next slide. So a couple of things on serving the government, then I'll wrap up. So of course, first off, on the next slide, if you think about it, so there were a lot of messages back in the early days. So we helped, with the Supreme Committee, getting the messages out there, staying safe, keeping distance, so on and so forth. So, we have a lot of communication channels, and we make them available to the government. We say, look, we can help. We can get messages to our customers. So, what are the key messages? So, using our own, we had our ringback tone. When you called, there were messages about stay safe and etc. And lots of other things that we did, but very again, these aren't our messages. It wasn't our place, but we made sure we got the messages from the Supreme Committee, and then we communicate, with their approval. But it's because we have this access to so many customers. It's a very nice channel to reach out to everyone. So this was the first part, awareness, our contribution to awareness. Next one. The second part, I guess this is maybe this would be the third, but the second one was with the Ministry of Education. You asked the question, so worked very closely. The ministry put in place some platforms, and we contributed through our CSR initiatives to those. We're providing bandwidth. Most recently, you would have seen we have a special initiative. There are certain schools in rural areas that don't have good connectivity. So working with the TRA and Oman Broadband, we're providing satellite connectivity to those schools in rural areas. It's a fantastic, and we have a backlog now of lots of citizens, not just schools, but citizens as well. So to provide connectivity in those rural areas, that's very interesting, because with everyone at home, you realize now, where you need connectivity everywhere. You can't. All parts of the Sultanate need that connectivity.
And how far are we on this project? I mean, the entire coverage of the population.
Satellite service is available, and it can pretty much cover the whole of the Sultanate now. So I don't know how many we've connected. I think there's something like 100 or so far, but there are at least I think 100 schools, for example, that need this connectivity. But we'll slowly connect, and they'll have this satellite connectivity, which is a great way to provide a service in those, the harder to reach areas. And we did other things. So we worked. It mentions here we provided free SIM cards and free data, and for quarantine students, for students that were coming back from abroad, for example. We offered packages for teachers who are obviously in the thick of it, trying to put together packages for the students. So we did some special packages for teachers as well. Next one. And I signed an agreement with Her Excellency there, as you saw. So this is back to school. Next one. Very close coordination. So one of the things that we've done is whitelisted it's something we call whitelisting. So basically, when you go to any of the education sites, they're not charged, they're not deducted from your data allowance. That's what we call whitelisting. So we've done that. We increased the bandwidth, as I mentioned before, at schools, and we've provided a lot of, here, this is what you asked me, we provide a lot of technical support and coordination. Because 1st of November was a big day, you know, hundreds of thousands of students suddenly all going back, and a lot of preparation went into that. And I think, of course, there are challenges, but I think, you know, it's a marvelous achievement, actually, and something that's worked rather well. Next slide. Health sector, of course, maybe that was in the earlier days. So again, you know, the health sector in the early days, you know, the frontline staff. So we provided support. Again, there's in terms of communication, we have a donation line so people could donate through the short codes that we have. We did donate for some medical facilities as well in the early days to help the testing process move along, medical equipment. Again, special packages, some equipment, and just general coordination to make sure that the health sector have you know, everything they need in terms of connectivity and the services that they need. Next. And of course, there are others, emergency services, and you can imagine, you know, lots of other. So not just exclusively to those two ministries, but lots of help, lots of coordination between all different parts of government, private sector, public sector. So finally, just to wrap up, going forward, challenges ahead. So what's on our mind? Just thinking about the future, returning safely to the offices, you know, opening the shops. A lot of this will depend on of course, we follow whatever, you know, the guidance of the Supreme Committee, but we have some challenges as well, of course, and we want to return safely, and we will at some stage return safely. Although how we return, will we change the way that we work and the hours that we work, or maybe we'll have more flexible working? It's something that honestly we're thinking about, because we've learned that actually this works okay. People at home, flexible hours. Maybe some people, you know, would like to, you know, stay with flexible working. We will see. It's a question mark. The second part is that part that you know I mentioned earlier, maintaining the digital adoption and growth. We have, you know, customers now really engaged with our digital channels. Of course, when we open the shops, we see that drop a little, but it's still much higher than it would have been if it were not for the pandemic. But we want to keep that adoption going. There's a lot of things that we want to do to add to our digital channels, to provide more facilities through social media, through WhatsApp, through Facebook, and so on and so forth, to communicate with our customers through digital channels. Of course, there are some concerns about, you know, businesses. You know, some businesses will have suffered, and of course that impacts suppliers like us if businesses you know, get into trouble. And what we would try to do is work with our business customers to help them overcome, you know, financial challenges. So we have put in place process, so if customers are in trouble, you know, we can maybe, you know, look at how we can help and change services, or look at payment terms and things like that. I mentioned there internet in rural areas, so that's a big focus now. You know, it comes sharply into focus. You need connectivity everywhere, so you know we have to do what we can to bring that to the rural areas. And this initiative on satellite is a nice one, and it's helping. Of course, we have to be prepared for future outbreaks. As I mentioned right up front, we have a risk register. There are lots of things in our risk register, but pandemic was not there. It will be there going forward, and we have to be ready for any future similar situations. I put their return of roaming. A big part of telecom's business is roaming. Of course, there's no roaming. Roaming is the business that we have with people coming into Oman from other countries, or people from Oman in other countries. Of course, there's very little traveling right now, so a piece of our business just, you know, almost disappeared. So we're hoping inshallah, that over time, when people start to travel again and more people come to the Sultanate, that we'll see the return of the roaming business. Not to forget, of course, lots of other challenges in the year ahead. VAT is coming, big impact. Have quite a big impact on a company like ours in terms of how we implement putting VAT on the bills and things like that. There is a third operator. Everyone always asks me about the third operator coming to Oman. So that's something that is definitely on our radar for next year. And the last thing is the 5G rollout. We've started the rollout of 5G, but really we want to accelerate that and provide this high-speed wireless connectivity across Oman, and that's a big focus for us, not just in 21, but in the next few years. And a big part of the investment that we make going forward will be, or vast majority, a lot of the investment that we make will be in 5G, and actually in digital, in our digital transformation. Those will be the investment priorities: 5G and digital transformation. So that's just what's on our mind looking ahead, and I hope that was useful, and I'm happy to. It's a sort of insight into our business, and happy to answer any further questions you have, either now or indeed even after today.
Yep. Thanks, Ian, for the very interesting and very clear and good presentation. We have some questions. One of the question is about, it's like an academic question. I mean, you mentioned that you will put the pandemic on your risk register, all right? And we know that pandemic, we don't know when they will occur. So how can that help? Putting it on the risk register and we don't know when it will come, for example. That's part of the question. Another part, that there is one perspective that modern organizations, they became so lean to the extent that they became fragile, and they may not stand such storm or such a crisis. Do you think do you agree on this perspective about being too lean and too efficient to the extent that they became fragile somehow?
Sorry, what was the first one again?
Yeah, I mentioned that the modern organization became...
Risk register. Yeah, sorry, yeah. Look, it's a good point. The reason that we would have to put it on there, I think, is that having gone through this now, we've learned a lot about the mitigation. Now, when you have a risk register, what you put on the risk register is the risk, the impact of the risk, the likelihood of the risk, and the mitigation. And if you have, and depending on all of those things, depends how high up on the list it becomes. And I think it will be there because it's something that we have to be prepared for future outbreaks. It's a fact of life. Right? We're living in it now, and we know and we hear that even with the vaccine, that could take years or a year. We're not 100% certain that it will work. Of course, we hope so. So we have to put it there, and we have to put that as a risk. But what we would then do is make sure that we have, and I think we have now good plans, mitigation plans. So we're ready, and the plans are in place, and they're clearly documented. And so if it happens, you pick up the book and off you go, because we're an organization at the end of the day. So people in the organization that are here today might not be there tomorrow. So that of course we want to try and keep all that learning in place, but it might not be there, and this may happen in 2 years' time when some of us are not there. So it's there in the risk register. It's clearly the mitigations are there. Everything is documented, and we're prepared. So that's why it would be there. And there are lots of other risks that could be in there. So global financial crisis is a risk, of course, but to what extent would it affect the business? To what extent can you mitigate, and so on and so forth. So, but this one, I think we have to keep it there because of the potential occurrence as well. In terms of too lean, I'm not sure. If I look at our business, um, I don't think so. Of course, some businesses will certainly suffer as a result of this pandemic, depending on the sectors. So I think it's probably a bit more specific to different sectors. It's a bit, some are different sectors. Uh, we know what they are. Some are suffering more than others. And you mentioned again, I come back to agility. So agility, ability to adapt. Maybe those leaner companies, they have the ability to adapt. Of course, we see, companies downsizing, slimming down further, tightening the belt, maybe shrinking a little bit so that they can ride the storm and then grow again in the future. So I don't know. I don't think so. I think maybe if you're lean and you can be, as long as you're agile and flexible, then you can ride this storm. I think. Of course, it's very, very difficult, and some particularly small businesses in certain sectors, it's very, very difficult. Um,
Yes, there are some questions that they have maybe like some financial, what you call, side. Not sure
okay.
it is the right. I mean, you mentioned that the demand has picked up very large and the operation because of the pandemic.
Yes,
But people, they said it was not somehow reflected on the financial result of Ooredoo in the last
that's
few
correct.
months.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are a few reasons for that. So okay. So if you remember, I mentioned early on that we saw a shift from people being out and about or mobile to being at home. And of course, when people are at home, they're not using their mobile; they're using the Wi-Fi at home. And the way that so when you're at home using the home broadband, that's a shared platform with a monthly charge. So people aren't using their mobile quite as much. So the mobile business was impacted. Of course, our fixed business has done well, and we've seen some growth in our fixed business. But the mobile business did suffer actually. So that's the first thing. Particularly in the mobile business, the prepaid business. As you know, around 300 odd thousand expatriates have left the country.
Mm-hmm.
So, a big part of our business, it's a very big part of our business, is prepaid mobile. And, the expatriate workers here, particularly maybe blue collar workers where projects are finished or, they're unable to work on projects where those downsizing took place. Those are very important customers for us. They may only bring a small average revenue per month, but there are lots of them. If you add them up, it's a big, and the population is 4 million, and so 350,000 is a big number from a population of 4 million. So,
yes.
So that had an impact. With the shops closed, imagine what that impact that has on demand. Now, of course, I've said we had digital channels, but of course, it has to have an impact on demand. And interestingly, here's another anecdote. So we're sitting there one day, we said, oh, hang on, the shops have been shut for 3 months. We've got cupboards full of handsets and they're getting old. What are we going to do with them?
Mm-hmm.
So this is inventory. And I think it was, I will tell you the number another time, but there's a big number of inventory and it's getting old. So and they're in the shop. So we had to gather up all of this inventory and actually pass it on to the wholesale market, for example, basically at a loss. Because what, with handsets, if they're a couple of months old, some of them if they're a couple of months old or so on, the price drops quite considerably. So there are lots of factors which impacted our business. So as I mentioned, prepaid, home broadband is good. The other thing I should mention lastly is the free local calls was exactly that. and we do make money from free local calls. We do charge for free, for local calls. It's a big part of our business, and I think, the amount of revenue foregone, particularly in the first quarter. I was going to put a revenue slide in, I didn't, but our revenue took a dive in March with free local calls. So a number of things, and you can imagine, I'd say shops closed for many months, and then shops open, and then curfews come in. So when curfews come in again, it just curtails economic activity. Equally, we have seen, when the curfew is finished, we suddenly see, the demand for top up, for recharge, for prepaid, it suddenly spikes.
Yeah.
Of course, if there's a curfew and the shops are closed, we see it dull down. So it has a, our industry is one that has, is doing okay. Has done okay. There are some businesses, as we just discussed, that, so we're in an important business, but it absolutely has been affected financially. Your questioner is absolutely right.
Yeah. So another question is, you mentioned on the challenges going forward, is the third operator to come. And also we know that there is what you call the infrastructure, Oman towers, okay, that will provide the towers for the operators.
Yes.
Don't you see this as it will ease the entrance to the competition, and how you think you will manage the competition? I don't know if you can ask this question or not.
You can. Look, competition is a great thing, especially for consumers, and as I always say, it kind of it makes you think about the service that you're providing, and it makes you think about the products and services and the quality of your network and the quality of the services that you're providing. And we launched an initiative. I mentioned this was our Tahaddi initiative, which was, to make sure that that we're ready, for a third entrant in the market, because it's competition at the end of the day, and for sure it will have an impact on our business. Customers will have another choice, and some customers will choose to use or try. Some may try, some may come back. We want to make sure that when they are here, that we've really made sure that we're doing our best to deliver a great service. Of course, being those digital channels are part of that, because we know that a new company will be a much more digital company. That if I was starting a new company, you'd go for almost fully digital from day one. Of course, you'll have some physical channels, but so there'll be so our digital transformation was also, or competition was also, if I'm honest, it was part of the catalyst for that was the fact that third entrant, not the only one, but it definitely plays a part in our thought process. So we're very prepared. This is normal in markets. Three is actually there's already good competition, actually, because we have the MVNOs as well here, Friendly and Red Bull and Renner, so it's quite competitive. But we're used to handling competition, and the best way to deal with competition is to be a great brand with great services and a great network and great products. So yep, we're quite pleased about that.
Yeah, maybe the last question we have, Ian. So how do you see the telecom sector playing a role in Oman's transformations as depicted in Oman's Vision 2040?
Yeah, I think it plays look, it's very clear that the internet or digital connectivity is the backbone of a digital economy. So telecoms infrastructure, the telecommunication sector plays a vital role clearly in that vision. And I'm very I'm very vocal about the fact that we should play our part in that, whether it's the connectivity, the investment that we're making for businesses here in Oman, or to attract foreign direct investment, to attract investors to the country. The telecommunications infrastructure in the country, the connectivity internationally, the data centers that we have here play a vital part in that. And again, with COVID, it's accelerating this digital transformation. So, the demand for bandwidth, for data centers, for hosting, for managed services is just going to grow. So absolutely, we play a vital, foundational role in that, and I'm really keen that we play our part. We are talking, of course, we talk to all of the concerned ministries and parties, and as I say, we're quite vocal about wishing to play our part, because we think, not just us, we think the telecom sector has an important role to play.
Yeah. Yes, there are a lot of questions still to ask, but we have kept you enough, I think, for tonight. So
No
at this moment, I would like to thank you very, very much for your time and for the interesting, what you call, presentation and the insight about the pandemic on the telecom sector. We apologize for the bad start that we had. So it was out of our control, of course. And thanks a lot.
But it made I think we'll all remember this event much more strongly now. And yes, and it made it a little bit different. So not a problem at all.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ian.